Yes, so it's 11:03, so let me start today's webinar. So welcome all on the next session of Profinit webinars. Today we have a topic, reference data management. So first of all, let me introduce my company and myself. So Profinit is a major Czech IT company. We are 23 years on the market. We have facilities in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, and we are covering mainly Czech, Slovak, and European customers. We have more than 500 colleagues we work with, and we focus on software development, application outsourcing, integration, and also this presentation is more about business intelligence and data warehousing. Also, we focus on big data and data science. I work for Profinit for quite a long time. I worked on different projects, also development projects. Here I want to only focus maybe on the latest projects also related to the reference and master data management. It was by coincidence for banks and the bank groups, basically here in the Central European region. So what are reference data? What's reference data management? So let's see what we will cover today. So let's discuss what it is. Let's discuss how MDM and reference data management, RDM, is related. We will show you quickly some basic architectures and usage of RDM systems. Also, there is some relationship between RDM and data quality management. We will discuss it shortly. We will talk about governance, which we believe is very important in this kind of projects. And we will focus on some specifics of an RDM project. So we will focus really on just some main area we believe is very important. And just bear in mind, all this presentation is not something synthetic or theoretical. We really want to bring you some experience from projects. So don't expect some academic descriptions and so on. So let's start. What are reference data? Reference data are basically lists, consolidated lists of values, organized in some structures, organized in some data structures, I mean, physical structures and then data structures. And usually they are referred to code lists, LOVs, lookups. So you might find different terms. All the languages have some basic term for this. I found all these terms too simplistic for the matter. Yeah, so usually these words tell about something simple, kind of flat code list. Usually it's more complex. And we will tell you why, and we will show you some examples. So the consolidated list of values are present on any line of business. So you can imagine a list of countries, list of currencies, colors, types of accounts, types of whatever, basically. Mainly it's some categorization. And what's a major fact and why RDM exists as a discipline, usually these lists are not unified even in one organization. So even things like currencies, you would be surprised that you have different lists of currencies in the same company with different keys, different structure, different width and length of the list. It's quite common. So usually some consolidation is needed. And just a real life example from my house, from my home. Basically, my list of colors is different to the list of colors of my wife. She still surprises me with some new colors. I don't even know what it's. So I use much less. So we can see even on this example, it's not an easy thing. Let's see a more realistic example. The list of currencies. So on the first side, it looks easy, like a flat list, but it's not. Yeah. So the list of currencies is a worldwide. I'm sorry. The currencies is a worldwide used list, and it's also standardized as an ISO code, as an ISO standard. But this list basically already contains several lists connected, and it also contains not just the currencies, but also commodities like gold. To make it more complex, it contains the list of the used currencies in a specific time and specific country. Basically, this relationship is many to many. And also, you can see on my slide that also there are different encodings of the currencies. So we see the alphabetic code, we see the numeric code. Yeah, so this is a really nice example that currency as a flat example is not flat and not an easy one. Let me a bit briefly discuss the relationship between MDM and RDM, because RDM is sometimes referred as a subcategory of the MDM. So MDM stays for master data management, RDM for reference data management. Yes and no. So the master data management is something where you process data that really change often, and this changes life. Yeah. So the change happens, usually is about, for instance, parties. So you have multiple source systems, multiple systems having parties, and you want to consolidate them, and this is master data management, and this change happens often. This change doesn't really require some change of some business process. Yeah? It just happens daily, maybe sometimes more often. You process millions of records sometimes, but at least thousands, so it makes sense. Usually you have some machine processing, when you have some program, some software which helps you to deal with some cases when it's not so easy to find the golden record. So there are some cases when the machine doesn't know really, is it the same one or not? So let me help to decide. And the changes are really frequent. On the other hand, reference data, these lists are not so big. These lists are usually comprehensible by humans, meaning the business analysts or the business people, the analysts can deal with them with the whole list. Still, you might use similar techniques like in MDM to master, to unify such lists, but usually it's rather an analysis task. Yeah? So usually don't need to overkill with the software just to make unification and golden records. If you talk about 10 or 100 records, yeah, usually you find the unification, you find the link between different notations of the same record, and these changes do not occur so frequently. Also, there is a definition that reference data management, and I don't have it here intentionally. So usually such change in reference data, it requires a change of a business process. I wouldn't say it's always like that. Yeah? So not all reference data are so tightly bound to the systems, to the processes, that a change in such data really requires a change. So sometimes yes, sometimes not. But definitely in MDM, such a change doesn't require a business process change. It just happens. So let me show you the difference between MDM and RDM on a quite naive example. On the upper part, we see the MDM, some list of basically parties or people. And here I see now that the first and the third is found by the machine as the same. Even there are some differences, and from these two records, a golden record will be constructed based on some rules. Basically, either the first or the third will be source attribute, the source of the attributes. So we are talking on attribute level for the golden record. So this is some definition made beforehand, and the machine will make one record from these. On the below part, we see an example a bit related to the upper part. So this rock musician, John Rucker, has two records in a record store. So the record store has some basic reference data management system storing the list of records he's selling. And we are not talking about unification here. We just have a simple list. We are extending anytime we buy some records or a new record pops up on the market. We do this rather manually. I hope it's clear. So what solutions use reference data management, or what architectures? What we encounter are two types of projects. So either we need some unification or mapping between different notations of the same, meaning unification of different currency codes in the company. And usually this is a new RDM system just tailored for Usually it's a data warehouse. So you're building a data warehouse and simply you find the need that you need something to unify your different notations on the same in your company. Or the second, that the RDM system is rather a master system, which is used by several systems. So kind of a centralized RDM, which serves as a source of reference data for different systems. I hope you grab the difference here. Of course, there might be situations when these two approaches are combined, or maybe you are building a data warehouse and you find your existing RDM solution suitable to fulfill your needs, or vice versa, you are building a data warehouse and your new RDM system will then become kind of a centralized RDM, not just for your data warehouse, but for multi-purpose. We will talk about this a bit later, but basically, this is the major difference we see in the projects. And the difference is really that this centralized RDM is really connected with multiple systems, either batch or real-time. Even it can be slave in some scenarios for some code lists. Mostly it's master. We will see it later. And last but not least, we see it many times. There is some small RDM solution inside the system. Yeah? So any system might have some list of values and it's got its own solution to maintain those lists. And of course, if you have many of such systems, of course, then you will see your lists are not unified. And then basically we come to the bigger RDM topic because of these facts. So let me move on. And let's show it a bit more visually, what I told you on the last slide. So on the left side, we see a sketch of this data warehousing situation. So I am integrating data from multiple systems. Here we have 3 systems, and my RDM provides me the reference data and basically the so-called mappings. Usually it's called mapping or unification mappings between the records or the keys of the different systems, which are about the same. Yeah. Here, I also want to maintain my RDM itself up to date. So I need to be sure that I'm up to date. So I somehow need to ensure that I'm consistent with the source systems. Because integration is not cheap, you can do it also indirectly, doing some comparisons in the data warehouse itself. So if you miss a value, you will know you need to do something in your RDM system, and you can do this with some latency based on your requirements. On the right hand, we see the central RDM or multi-purpose RDM, which is a source for multiple systems in your organization. On the system 3 example, we see the RDM is also probably slave for some code lists because the arrow goes inside the RDM. Yeah? It means some code lists are not mastered in the RDM system, but really mastered in the system 3. On the other hand, some other lists, some other objects are really mastered in RDM. So this was the difference. And this is what we see on the projects, these 2 basic approaches. Let's move to the relation of the reference data management and data quality management. So the reference data from an RDM solution can be the standard or the etalon to use, to be used in some DQ solutions. So basically, you provide the data to be checked against to your data quality solution from your RDM solution, or you provide data from reference data management system to any of your systems for some selections or drop downs here, yeah? Whatever. So basically, this way you ensure some consistency, and then the data coming from that system are consistent with the other systems because your RDM is the master for multiple systems. So this way you already somehow ensure that your data are consistent across the systems. Because of course, your RDM system might be the slave, as it was shown, you must ensure that your RDM system itself is basically up to date. Yeah? So here you need to take care that your RDM system has good data quality by itself. It doesn't really make sense to have an RDM system without good data quality, because then it's not trustful. Yeah, so you can do it with different methods, either direct integration, or you can do it by data quality checks outside of RDM, and you can react to some differences. So basically, the difference must be always zero, yeah? Meaning your system is up to date as the slave system. What we see sometimes that the RDM system itself is the kind of broker for data quality. So it proposes some services which to be used by other systems to check data against. Yeah, so you have your data quality system somehow integrated to your reference data management system. Let me show it on a few kind of examples. So we see here some basic typos. Yeah, so if your system is not guarded, you are not a drawdown which is guarded, you might have some issues like this mistypos of the euro currency, yeah? And your RDM system can say, yes, this is not correct. Correct it to the correct euro notation or something. On the other hand, because we were talking that the RDM system serves multiple systems, inside your system there might be data that basically looks like data quality flows. Yeah, but because it's true, it's the reality in your systems, in your architecture, simply you somehow must be ready that you even support this kind of situations, kind of underscore US for dollar. Yeah, this is a reality. For some reasons, for some historical reasons, a system in your landscape has such US dollar key, and simply that's life. To change it would cost too much, so you simply will support it, maybe at least for some time. And maybe a more complex case on the bottom part. Here there is a very high level example of some product definition check. Yeah, so I'm checking in my RDM system or against my RDM system whether such combinations or variations of my product families are valid. Yeah, so whether it's okay to have for such segment, for such loyalty and period, such a rate. Yeah? So you can have your RDM system having some more complex structures when you combine multiple code lists into some meta code list, kind of a very basic product catalog. So let's move on. Here is a topic which we believe is really important, basically governance. In your RDM solution, you will have tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of objects or code lists with the list of values, with some hierarchies, maybe some groupings, basically multiple objects based on your design. And if you don't have some governance built on this, it's unmaintainable. Yeah? So you will start your project, you will fill in your data, you will have some initial load. Without governance, your data will be simple, not the truth. They will be obsolete if you don't know who shall take care of this data, who is the source of this data, who consumes this data, and so on and so on. So this is here what we are covering with the word governance. There is also a kind of meta issue here. If you have those people defined on any level of granularity of the objects, again, based on some design, it also must be ensured that those people are maintained in time. Yeah. So what if someone leaves the company? What if you have some organizational change? So this must be ensured. Usually there is some nominee from a higher level who takes care that for instance, owner of a code list is then replaced by someone new once he's leaving or changing, moving somewhere else in the organizational structure. What also belongs here are some processes or workflows. So when you are doing changes, and I told you that sometimes or some code lists are so tightly bound to the business processes that simply you can't do the change just doing the change without some governance, some basically confirming this is the correct change, we are doing it correctly in time, we are not going ahead of the schedule, we do it with the correct people involved, we do some testing and so on and so on. On the other hand, if you have these workflows, it might be an overkill. Yeah? So sometimes the code list can be maintained by one person, and you don't need a confirmation, because then the confirmation is just formal and just takes time. Yeah? So it might end up in a situation that you did your change, but you wait 3 days because your boss is sick or something like this. Yeah, so you might find a good balance whether you need such complex process or rather leave it on one person, but still you need to know who that person is. So then your code list is known and trustful. What's also very important here, your system must support some auditability, some traceability. You definitely will come to some situations when you will need to know who did the change, why the change was done, when it was done, what was preceding this change, and so on and so on. Yeah, so these questions will pop up for sure. We are humans, we do mistakes, but without tracing those things, simply you can get lost. And again, it's again some trust. Yeah? So the RDM system must be a trustful system, trusted by the others, trusted by the consumers. And here at this point, let's stop a bit. I would like to ask you here, what do you think about data governance? Do you think it's important? Or maybe you don't think it's important? I would like to have some it depends answers maybe, and also I would like to hear why. Oh, great. So far, I don't know if you see it on your screen, I see like 10 from 20 people told us yes. Oh, one answer is it depends. I'm just not sure whether I can see it. Now you shall see the results. I hope you see it. So we have 11 answers from 12 saying yes, it's important. One answer is it depends. And now I'm really puzzled if I could hear what it means, it depends. Maybe you can put it to the chat, or we can leave it to the discussion at the end. Yeah, maybe let's move on. Maybe let's leave it to the end. So thank you very much for the answers. Yes, so let's move on. Let's now focus on some implementation areas, some focus areas. So in reference data management, the data model is probably even more important than in other systems. So you must be basically prepared that you will store multiple code lists. So meaning those objects have the data model itself inherent. Yeah, meaning you don't really have a data model. Rather, you shall design a meta model. So your RDM system can hold multiple code lists. And this shall be prepared to having it for different structures, meaning if you are ready to support multiple systems, it must mean you are ready to store different structures in your RDM system, in the same RDM system. Different data types, different granularity of data we will talk about, basically some mapping between the values, mapping between the models itself. So I have this attribute in this system, which is the same as the other attribute as in the other system. Basically, a design must be really good. Otherwise, it's probably not an RDM system. Yeah? Meaning you will not be able to design or build some generic workflows, some generic GUIs to maintain data manually, data interfaces, any validation checks, and all this basically automation. Yeah, because if you have hundreds or thousands of lists, it definitely leads to some automation. Without a good design, without a good meta model, well thought, this is not possible, and it will be very costly and very, very, how to say, let's say a mess. Sorry for the wording. A very brief shot on the data model, just on the list of values. So usually you have some internal ID, and this a good practice is not to provide this internal ID out, but your system definitely needs something to track that this record of this version is this record of this version. Yeah? So this is the red TID. Then we see some CD or code. So this is some kind of natural key, which is usually present. And here we see that the third and the second and the third lines or record is basically the same record, but it changed over time. Yeah? So also important aspect is that we maintain some time validity, some timeline. And we see that the change was on some category, which looks like a reference to other code lists. So here we already see we have at least two code lists connected, two objects connected with a dependency or relation or foreign key, how you like it. And this is a very basic and really common structure. Yes, so you have some code, some natural key, some short but descriptive identification, which is better than the GR, so group-based, and then some description when you describe it really into depth. It can be usually some hundreds of characters long, really description of what this record means. This is the basic structure of a common code list. Let's move on now. So far, it was the data model. On top of the data model, here it's called the data design. Basically, a pattern, how you store your data. Yeah, because the data model is only the structure, but also because it's complex and you will maintain multiple systems, multiple granularities, and so on and so on. You need to define well how you will store the data. And it's very important to have it well thought and well documented, because this defines basically your data and the rules how your data will be used. Yeah, so otherwise, without such clarity, the users don't really know how to maintain data. The consumers do not know how to understand the data. Yeah, so this is very important to have it well thought, well documented, and published somewhere. And we have here some examples to understand what we talk about. For instance, if you have a relation between two data sets about the same, kind of mapping between two currency codes, it must be well defined somewhere how complete such a list shall be, so it's okay. I mean, what's the definition? So my input is not validated wrong with some error message, it's not complete. So it's just a definition or some data design pattern defined somewhere, of course, then it leads to some machine check. Or the last one is a good one. If you have a hierarchy of values, how I see what's the root node? What's the definition? Either it's something that in a link you have null or nothing, either you have a specific root node, so you know this is the root one and use it for all the hierarchies, or something different. Again, there are multiple patterns existing, and you need to choose one which suits you best in your, maybe you have already something in your organization used, you shall just reuse that one. And here, let's summarize it a bit more into width. What we believe are the main focus areas you should take care of in your model and data design. You will definitely need to support multiple granularities and types of keys. Yeah, so even systems might have different data types, of course. Yeah, the systems might have multiple compounds of keys. The keys must be unique in time. There are not overlaps in time. We talked about business validity. Sometimes it's not enough to have the business validity. Sometimes even so-called technical validity comes into place. So you need to support sometimes two timelines, two different timelines of records. The first one is kind of existence and non-existence, and the other one is validity of a value in a specific time. A very interesting case I saw many times is the resurrection case, we called it. A rule must be defined what shall happen if a key that was already closed, so a value that was closed maybe last or two years back, yeah, now it popped up again with a new validity. So is it okay even? If it's okay, does it have to have the same values, or can it totally have different values? Meaning then I changed if it will be different values, it means I changed the semantics of the same key. Yeah, so is it allowed or not? I saw multiple cases, even I saw cases when it was needed. Yeah, so for some reason, the system, some core banking system, simply reused the old codes because it doesn't have enough. So 5 years ago it was something, now it's something new, but with a new key. I mean the same key, yeah? But the same key has a different meaning. Then we have relations, hierarchies, groupings, meaning you have really some hierarchies, meaning different granularities on top of each other, or you just have some groupings, meaning you need different values for different systems. For instance, you only have European currencies sent to some systems because the system simply doesn't care about the South American currencies. And I think we already mentioned this, that you will need to be prepared for different granularity of information because different systems will have different data types and so on. And it's simply the case. So even if it's not nice, usually you don't have enough resources, enough money, just do a big bang. Yeah. So you have your BI initiative with a new RDM system. You want to consolidate everything. Simply, it's not possible in the same time. It's not possible that everybody will now align to me. No, they will need 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe it will stay forever. Yeah. So you will need to support systems which have strange keys, strange values, but yes, that's life. And your RDM system can really support it, and that's good. This is why you have your RDM system. And also a requirement, quite common, you shall be ready to provide your language variants of your codes, currencies in different languages, or rather, maybe a better example, some types of accounts in different languages used on some internationalized GUI in a system. Let's read this up from a bit different angle. So your system will support probably multiple systems. Some systems you will only store probably as keys. You don't need to store as a full records because you don't feed the systems or don't feed them yet. Or you only need some kind of data warehousing unification when you simply need to map the keys to the kind of unified key used in the reporting. So this is the middle. When some systems you only store as keys, but then some systems you store as the full attributes, the full attribute set of those systems, meaning probably you feed these systems from your RDM system. So you need all the attributes. So only this way you can really be the source of the system, of such system. Now we move to a different area, because so far we talked rather about some design, data model, data design. Here I want to talk really a few words about the challenges of the RDM project, because RDM project usually is not so easy as a normal software development project. Usually you develop your code, your system, your software system in a standard lifecycle. You develop it, you test it, you deploy it to production. And usually you don't really care about the data, because usually you have some initial load, or the data will just be typed in slowly and the system will be filled in. But usually in the RDM, it's the opposite. You need to take care about some lifecycle of your reference data as it was the software. Even more, the software goes usually one direction if it's not some kind of hotfix. Here you need to really support both directions. We talked about that reference data sometimes is really coupled tightly to the business processes or to the systems, meaning you need to prepare such complex changes or complex hierarchies or new account type hand in hand with the changes in the software systems or integrated systems. Yes. So then the arrow here is the green arrow goes the usual way. So you kind of develop your data, then it goes to ACC, you test it together with the systems, you integrate, test it, and then you go to production. But you also have some objects which really change often, and here you simply can't afford that you wait 2 weeks for the release because, I don't know, you have a new, now I don't know what, yeah, something that doesn't require a business process, a new rating, a new, I don't know, a new color, for instance, yeah. And because your data needs to be consistent, you need to somehow ensure that these both arrows go hand in hand and are consistent. So for instance, you do not create a duplicity on production then goes down to dev, or vice versa, or your duplicates meet on ACC. Yeah, you need to take care. Either you do it in the same system, or you really do it using this development ACC production, using some techniques, how to not have these overlaps, and so on. And let me know, not go into more detail, we don't really have time for this detail today. Also, what's different on the RDM systems, you might have two setups if you develop a system. So either you are part of a bigger landscape, again, maybe a new BI system, your development, your RDM development goes in the same pace and passes the same development lifecycle as the other systems or the integrated systems. So you go hand in hand, meaning also probably the data is filled in and propagated the same way as your RDM software. Yeah, so you go the same direction, the same pace. This is the left side of the picture. Or you decide a different strategy, you go for a different strategy when you develop your RDM system separately on the side, meaning your users will be never bothered that your system is not absolutely ready or you have some bugs. So you here on the right side, you really use your RDM as ready-made in production quality, and you simply have to have a life cycle on the side. Basically, you don't go hand in hand with the releases. You might have different releases, somehow, of course, synchronized, but the synchronization here happens really on the production releases and not below. You might ask a question now. So now you probably see it's not really an easy area. It's quite complex. How can I build my system? Shall I build it from scratch now? Or is there something on the market? Of course, on the market, you might find interesting tools. You might find it in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and so on and so on. And without using such tools from the market, for sure, you need to kind of reinvent the wheel, yes? On the other hand, what we see, and of course it's natural, those systems will have some limitations you might find not suitable in your architecture for some reason. Yeah? Let's not go into detail. I just want to say that you shall take care, you shall really choose your tool well. Of course, you will balance the delivery, what it provides, and the cost, and so on and so on. But the very, very important thing is that no tool, either it's your custom built tool or a tool from the market, will not solve your problems by itself. And it's again mainly about the governance. Without governance, the best tool will fail. So this project will not be successful because of a nice tool. A nice tool can help a lot, but it's not the solution by itself. And basically, this was the last one. And let's have a conclusion. Reference data management can really bridge people. Yeah, so because you have different entities, different systems, but usually meet on some objects which talk about the same kind of account types and so on. So RDM is something that really can connect people, and definitely business people will meet there. RDM is really not just codeless. We really see many times somehow reference data is somehow underrated, underestimated, is different, is very difficult to explain why we need these resources, why we need this time to develop it and test it, and so on and so on. I hope the presentation gave you some insight why. We talked about governance, which is very, very important, and any project without some governance will definitely fail, and your data will be not trusted. Your system will be not used anymore, and maybe there will be a new project coming that will want to replace your system. Last but not least, but very important, the technology will not substitute the governance. On the other hand, the RDM is a very nice and very challenging area, so a lot of people can find some fun and challenges there. So I hope you liked the presentation. And now there is some time for questions, if you have some questions, of course. I hope you have. Yeah, so there is a question about hierarchies and where they are used. So a quite common hierarchy is, for instance, a product hierarchy, or a very basic situation which is always there. You have organizational entities. You have some organizational units which have some common master organization. But the hierarchies you might find also in anything like, for instance, grouping of the currencies needed for specific systems, or you want to categorize currencies to European currencies. So you can base your hierarchization based on different criteria. So usually you have different hierarchies, or you might have different hierarchies from different angle on the same list of objects. Was it clear? I hope yes. Is there any more questions? I hope I see them all. I only saw one. I just hope I did it correctly now, but I really don't see any other questions. So if there are no more questions, I thank you very much for attendance. I think my colleagues will send you the presentation, and I'm looking forward for the next sessions, maybe even in more detail over master and reference data management. Thank you very much.